Ed Bouchette covers the Steelers for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Kind enough to join us. I'm sure a busy day. Ed, what's next in this situation?
Dan, I'm just trying to write something about that. Bell can come in at any time up to 10 weeks and sign his franchise tag, and they'd have to take him unless they're going to rescind it, and they're not going to do that. But with what his teammates, the way they reacted yesterday, you have to wonder what that whole thing is going to be like if he joins them anytime soon, and they have to start using him.
Yeah, that was what was surprising. It's rare when players talk about other players' teammates' money. They may say it privately, but not publicly. And here you have the offensive line. I'm curious if Mike Tomlin is there a moratorium on this topic, do you think, today, that when you guys get a chance to go in and talk to the Steelers? Is anybody talking about what they were talking about yesterday?
Well, it won't be for another hour till we can go in there, Dan, but I think most of these guys are going to say, hey, look, we said what we said yesterday, and that's going to be it. I mean, I've been around these guys long enough. These offensive linemen have been here forever, and I just think that's how they'll approach it. But they were angry because they believed he was going to come in, and now that he's holding out, it's thrown a wrench into their offense. A guy like Ramon Foster, who their starting guard here for a long time, is 32, going into the last year of his contract. This may be his last chance to try and win a Super Bowl, and he believes his teammates hurting that.
What's the likelihood of the Steelers trading Le'Veon Bell?
Well, the problem there is no other team can give him a long-term deal. That's part of the whole thing if he's traded. If they pulled the franchise tag, he'd become a free agent. He can make any kind of deal he wants. But if they trade him, and of course he'd have to sign the deal and then trade him, so he'd have to have something worked out with his new team, and maybe they can get a wink,
Yeah.
Hey, we'll do this for you next year. But I don't know, in this league, if he gets hurt or something else, they're not going to sign him to a big deal next year, that team, if it's a devastating injury. So there's no guarantee for him that way either. So I don't see a trade, Dan.
Could you see a scenario where he sits out for 9 games and then says, hey, I'm going to show up, and then the Steelers say, no, we're good without you, Le'Veon? Then that screws up free agency for him, doesn't it?
Well, not really, because he would become an automatic free agent, and that's still only a little bit more than half the season. I'm sure there's a team out there who would be willing to give him a long-term deal starting right now. You know what I mean? Let's say a contending team like, I don't know, the 49ers, who need a running back. They could sign him for a 5-year deal for blah, 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 and that would be that. And push for the playoffs this year. Maybe he's the final piece that can do that.
What if James Conner plays well?
You are thinking like the rest of us, Dan. That, of course, is their hope now. And actually, Ramon Foster said this. The guard said this to me yesterday. What if we're 8-0 and he comes in and Connor's playing great? What do we do? We're not going to change everything for him. I think he would either be the backup or they would have to decide right then and there if they want to then pull the franchise tag.
Oh, boy. This is my problem with the Steelers, Ed, and you've been around there a long time. This team finds drama, or drama finds it,
sure did.
Right?
Yeah.
It's every year that just feels like that they just do it. They almost self-implode. There's just something about it. I don't know if it's Mike Tomlin or it's Ben or if it's just because you have one of the steadiest ownerships in NFL history, but it just feels like there's no trickle down here.
Yeah, last year was a big drama year, and we're off to a fast start here this year, Dan.
Oh man.
Yeah, it's one thing. I mean, maybe the Steelers should never have tagged him. I think probably they look back, they would have been better off signing another veteran running back, using that money, find an inside linebacker in free agency, which they desperately needed, and then draft a running back. Say to Le'Veon, hey, thanks for your efforts, but we're using this $14.5 million in these other areas. I think they would have been better off doing that. But it goes back to Dan Rooney saying he wishes he would have never cut Franco Harris, even though Franco was in his waning days. They don't like to get rid of great players, and I think that was the bottom line here.
Is there tension? Like, can you feel it when you're in the locker room around this team?
You could yesterday. I mean, those linemen were hot. I think the embers are still burning in there, Dan, in the locker room. Yeah, they were not happy. I've only seen that one or two other times. One was last year when James Harrison signed with the New England Patriots after he allegedly kind of forced the Steelers to cut him, but he was gone by then. This is a teammate who still may come into that locker room.
Have fun today, Ed. We appreciate your time.
All right, Dan. Thanks for having me on.
Ed Bouchette. He covers the Steelers, the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette.
For more Dan Patrick Show, tune to Audience Channel 239 on DirecTV or download the Dan Patrick Show app.